Where is Pat? Oh, there's everybody. All righty, everyone. Thank you for joining the MLO Bros this morning. We're streaming over live right now in everything Canfield for everyone to see. I am Isaac Schuster. To my right is Lex Calder. He is the numbers guy, self-proclaimed numbers guy of the Committee to Support Canfield Schools. Down below me is Pat Shuley, the president of the committee, and then down over in the bottom right side of your screen is John Schuler. I didn't get a title for you, John, but I'm assuming you're website and marketing guy.
I am. I'm the catch-all. I take all the other stuff, right?
Perfect. So, Committee to Support Canfield Schools. We're going to have a discussion about it today. Like I said, we're streaming live and everything Canfield right now. I just tagged everybody so they can see it. This will be recorded and shared on everything Canfield, so you can go back and watch it if you're at work right now and coming in and out of watching this. So we are off. Who's starting? Pat, a word from your president. Pat, you want to start us off with the topics we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so I think we'd like to just hit on a couple of things. We've got a fundraising event next Friday, so we want to try to get as much visibility to that as possible. We've got an amazing fundraising team that put together a fifth quarter event for after our football game up at Kensington. We have on the Committee to Support Canfield Schools Facebook page, we've got tickets for sale. There's a bourbon raffle. And there'll be basket raffles, live auctions, and stuff at the event. So I think that's obviously just wanted to make a plug for that. It's going to be a good time coming out, support Canfield Schools at Kensington. And I think a real quick blurb about the group. So Lex and myself, were part of the facility committee that met for pretty much 6-8 months. I forget how long it was. Working through different plans with different community members, getting input to kind of arrive at this plan that we see coming up on the ballot in November. Right now, we're a group of parents, teachers, Canfield residents that believe that strong schools are important for the community. And we're out there trying to advocate as much as we can to get this levy passed and get some of the more aged buildings in Canfield replaced with some better facilities.
So for those that are unaware, completely left in the dark, like myself, I live in Canfield. I'm not in Canfield Schools. I'm over in South Range, but Canfield mailing address. So I'm close to you guys, and it does affect me in one way or another. But for those that totally know nothing, the levy will get new schools, like break it down for those that are completely unaware.
Yeah, so the levy will combine into one elementary school. So it would be a new building on the Hilltop site. There's enough land up there for us to build a new combined K through 4 elementary school building. Okay. And then the new middle school would go on the land that the current middle school is on, just get built right behind it, kind of wrap around the existing structure, and then the existing structure would be torn down. And the high school is not new, but it will get, I think, about $15 million in renovation. So there's significant roof issues with the high school, so that would be replaced. There's lighting and I think some other safety upgrades that would happen. Parking lots, a big thing at the high school. So we would keep the existing Hilltop building. The administration would go in there. A small portion of that building would be dedicated to, superintendent, staff of the superintendent's office. The rest of that building, we're exploring different community partnerships that we could bring into that space to help utilize the leftover space, or parents and stuff that have dealt with coaching kids sports in the springtime in Ohio. Not a pleasant time to be outside sometimes. So maybe potentially utilizing that building for some sort of indoor practice, the gym area, the cafeteria area, stuff like that. So we're trying to utilize that space as much as possible, since we'll have the administration in a small corner of it. And then the CH property we have money in the levy to kind of abate and demo that if we go that route.
Interesting. Lex, numbers guy, what do you want the people to know?
I think one thing is to see like the age of the buildings, right? I want to show a graphic here of the actual the middle school, which shows all the various phases that have been used and built over the time.
Yeah. If you want to share it, I can pull it up for you. I don't know how if our internet will hold up. So
I hit present. Did you
Yep.
Are you able
I got
to?
you.
Now
So this was one that we went to TDA and they got some better footage than Google Homes to put it on there, and we're going to have an animation that one of our members, Dave Mulaney, is going to be putting together to put on the website. But it just shows the different phases of where it started. So the current administration building is right here. That's the original wing, was built in 1922.
That's
then
interesting.
You see the main, right. And then there's the main part, which is where this is the facade that you see. When it was back, it still says high school on it, right? It's just it's been it's just evolved over time as they've had to add more spaces. So another wing to add more classrooms, another wing to add more classrooms, and the final was like the gym area and some other the bigger areas they have for like
very cool.
the sixth grade. So you can see it's a patchwork of it. So it's not that it's 100 years old everywhere, but if you look at these different roofs and the conditions that are in and where they've been done, it's just flat roofs. Over time they just get beat up and they get replaced, and we're dropping a lot of money, between $500,000 and $1 million a year right now, just in the routine maintenance, not including things like the HVAC upgrades they did recently at the high school. They had to replace it only half at a time because it costs several $1 million each time to do that. So I just want to give an illustration so people understand when it's true. It's not 100 years old, the whole thing, but none of it's new. And the newest part of it is still, 30 years or 20 years old at this point, 30 years old.
Okay. Perfect. Anything else you want to share there? That's awesome information. It's really cool. I've never seen something like that. Very, very cool. John, do you have anything you'd like to bring up, Mr. Website Marketing Guy?
Yeah, everything's fun in my world, right? So I do think it's important to note, Isaac, the question that you started off with, which was, what do we want people to know what's actually on the ballot? So I think there's been a lot of misinformation circulating, and I think there are multiple factors that lead to that. But just to reinforce that the issue, what is being voted on is not what kind of plan we're going to do. The facility committee that Pat had mentioned, the facility committee went through that already and worked with the group to determine what the best proposed plan is going to be. So supportcanfieldschools.org is the website that outlines exactly the plan that Pat just described and has other assets and other information. And the plan here is to provide an objective overview for voters to understand truly what is on the ballot. And I feel like there has been a lot of discussion and misunderstanding. Even my own dad, right? He's like, hey, I'll probably vote for the levy, right? I'll vote for the levy, but what's on the ballot exactly? And, you know, him having different conversations with folks in the community. We're trying to create sort of a centralized repository to keep information for voters to be able to make the best, most educated decision based on what's in front of them. So support CanfieldSchools.org. The homepage does overview exactly what Pat just described. You know, we'll have some renderings up there on, you know, what we think the new buildings might look like. And there's also a tax calculator, things like that on the site. So yeah, so that's exactly kind of what Pat just described, but it's got a more visually stimulating overview and whatnot.
And I put in the comments for everybody watching, I put support CanfieldSchools.org just so that you can copy and paste that and go check the site out. Interesting. All good stuff, guys. What are you guys at all worried? And I know Lex and I were talking about this a little bit before the podcast started with the taxes coming. That's the big topic on Facebook right now.
That's timing, right?
Right. It's just god awful timing, because now anybody who's opposed to it has an excuse to say, well, this is going up, so, you know, I don't want any more. And they're gonna try and use that to overwhelm everyone. So you guys worried about that at all?
I think the news article headlines and some of the information that I think the different media sources that kind of ran with that yesterday put out there, it was definitely misleading. I think the headline was property taxes go up 30% on average, or 38% on average in Mahoning County, and it's the value of your home is going up 30%. That does not mean your property taxes are going up 30%. And I think that's the main thing that we're trying to communicate to people, is that information is not necessarily the way that it was framed is not accurate. And I feel like that led people to go out, essentially take their property taxes, multiply it by 30%, and then say, this is what I'm now going to have to pay. And that's not how that's going to work. And I'm not gonna speak, you know, to how property taxes are calculated, millage and inside millage, outside millage. I think it's a complicated issue to try to talk about. We have you know, financial folks that are working with the committee to help explain it to folks and make sure that people aren't freaking out. Now it's obviously, it's kind of gone off on Facebook and people have been talking about it, but if on the website we have an email address. If you email questions there, we'll put you in touch with somebody who can kind of walk you through what this would look like. And then also just sending us a message to the Facebook group would be another great way for us to find out who has questions about, you know, the tax implications for residents in Canfield. I think the timing was not great as we're trying to get this levy passed, and I feel like we're going to try to just combat that with facts and information, and we're going to put people in touch with the experts that can answer those questions most effectively, for sure.
Right. We need to get a tax professional on the podcast and interview him and have him break it down in like a like 7th grade level of understanding is what we like to do, to then get it out to people. Like, here's the simple math for you to calculate, you know, what your taxes will increase next year, whenever. And I think that's the best way to go about it. So
the number one misconception we're battling right now is that people think they can take that new 2023, which will go into effect in 2024 estimate, and then plug that in to our calculator versus the 2188 per 100,000, which is what the current millage and current valuation was set at. What people are misconstruing is that you got to remember, this is a fixed repayment loan. So that amount of money was being divided by the current valuation, which equals this exact millage, which then equals this exact dollar per 100,000. Once they recompute that, because there's going to be more money per house, you're going to take that same amount of money and it's going to actually be smaller per 100,000. It'll still be the same number per month coming out. There's maybe a slight shift depending upon if your house went up more than the other guy's house. That's the only differential. But the basic amount and the math you're doing now is still going to be 2188 times the current value of your home. So don't plug in the new number as though that's what you're going to have to pay, because that is not directly corollary. So that's the hardest part to get past, is people are starting to take this number, and it's been, distributed on multiple discussion sites, shall we say, on Facebook.
Right.
People are saying, it's going to go up this much now. So for me, it would have made it, instead of being $55 a month or $600 a year, it would have made it like over $850 a year, because my house went up by 30%. But neither my property tax is directly corollary, and especially the tax, the school levy is a fixed loan amount being distributed amongst the houses that are there. So that's not going to shift directly by any means. That the number would have to change to make it accurate.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm looking at this comment here. Got a couple comments, but they're all good stuff. I can't see the stuff on everything Canfield because I'm sharing from the MLO Rose Facebook page. But that's all right. Anything else, guys? What else we got? Pat, back to you.
Yeah. So I want to mention I've met with the teachers in Canfield. I feel like we've kind of talked about some of the conversation and dialogue that's happening out there on Facebook. I think I've seen some folks who may be against the levy saying that, Canfield schools are already excellent. We've scored well. I think we just got an A rating from the state of Ohio, and I think that's fantastic. I mean, my family, my kids are in Canfield because the school system and Lex has the renderings up here. Sorry, real quick. Meeting with the teachers, especially, John and I took a tour of the middle school and saw some of the conditions there. And I feel like we have excellent teachers. We have amazing staff in these buildings. And I think they're the ones who are doing a fantastic job educating our kids, keeping us with that A rating. And I think they deserve better working conditions and a better environment in which to continue to do that. I think, they are great teachers, and great teachers can go be great teachers somewhere else. And once we lose that, and once teachers decide, I don't want to go work in a 90-degree classroom with 25 7-year-olds who are all getting irritable and having trouble focusing because of the classroom conditions. When that person decides to go teach somewhere else, then that's going to impact the grade that we get in Canfield and the scores that our schools have. So, for me, this is an issue of making sure that we continue that legacy of excellence that we have in Canfield, and continue to provide just a safe and an adequate working environment for the teachers, and the most conducive learning environment for students that we can in Canfield.
Absolutely. And I know that to add to your point there, Pat, we're handling Luke's dealing with the same thing over in Poland, and talking to the superintendent, discussing them trying to get a new school as well. And me being a loan officer and dealing in the real estate industry, location is what real estate agents always say, right? The most important thing in that location, though, is the school systems and the ranking you have compared to the neighborhoods around you. So if somebody decides they want to move to this area, you got to look at it. You got to look at it like an investment. Investing in your schools makes your area better all around, gets better people, you get better teachers. If you look at it like an investment in the long term, it will pay for itself, because your property values will go up in turn, because more people will want to live here, because the schools are new, the schools are nice, and the grades are good. Yep. So it is an investment, is how you got to do
it. Well said.
It's been fascinating to see too, even amongst our committee, our group. I thought heading into this, it was just going to be, I went to Canfield, my wife and I, we lived in Chicago for a while, and we moved back to the area because of the schools. We said, look, we're planning to have kids, we're going to buy property, where's a place where you can have excellent school systems with property value that's not going to be completely cost prohibitive,
right?
Still have great schools and still have great community, and this is the answer, right? Canfield's a great place for that, as is Poland. So this area is really good for that, and the folks that have been contributing to the committee, it's been fascinating to see people that weren't Canfield graduates that moved to Ohio for the schools, that came to the area for the schools. And you have people in the medical professional, you have marketing people, you have teachers, you have community members, and all these different folks from all these different walks of life. It's not a political thing. It's a community thing, and everyone getting involved to support this initiative. So that in and of itself, supporting what you just kind of said, Isaac, I think has been really, really kind of compelling and exciting for us to see within the campaign, and create a lot of great momentum.
Right. And in Poland, we also saw there's a large population of empty nesters in Poland. And I think it's just the demographic right now. There is a large demographic in Canfield, Poland, both of them, where empty nesters that see the school levy and they say to themselves, well, I'm not even going to see the schools. Why do I care if these schools are built? I don't have kids anymore. Why should I care? Well, you are eventually going to move out and new people are going to move in. So you want to sell your house for the maximum amount of value. If that's 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whenever you decide to move out as an empty nester. If you have, like I talked about before, even if the schools aren't built yet, but the levy's accepted and you start paying the taxes, and people are going to do their research when they decide to buy your house and say, oh, a new school's coming down the pipe. This is going to be great for the community. They're going to want to move. It will drive up demand for your house. So you will see, you'll see a high, I think it'll impact your home value for sure. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but Lex, what do you think, big guy?
So I think we need to touch on kind of some of the inherent advantages you get by doing the building in the configuration we want. There was a lot of different things we went through iterations. We started off last year, they wanted to do a K-8 campus at Redgate. That people didn't like the location, right? Like, this location part has become very, very important. There's a lot of nostalgia wrapped in the middle school. As you can imagine, it's been there for 100 years. So like pretty much anybody that's gone to school here has gone through that building, whether it was back when they were in high school, back when it was doing that, to when it's been through the middle school now. So people really wanted that in the middle of town, that idea of having kind of by the green people could access. So we as a committee, even though it seems when you look at it from the big picture, like having it on Shields Road, K-8, it's kind of a centralized area of like between Canfield Township and city versus the middle of the city, it didn't matter in the end, because what we as a committee did was listen to people and what they wanted, and that's what you need to have, that buy-in. So we chose to say, listen, we want to do this middle school at the middle school. We want to keep Hilltop where it is, but we got to consolidate. You can't have two buildings. The inherent problems there with unequal class sizes are always a problem. Talking to Mr. Knoll about the nightmares of trying to draw these different districts between who goes to Hilltop and who goes to CH Camel. One year you may have a first grade class that has 26 kids per teacher. The next year, let's say, may only have 20. In that, Hilltop has a big differential, because once you choose it, you're not going to split the family up, right? The next kid comes up, he's going to go there too. So that constant balancing act they have is never quite make it equitable. Of course, there's the inequality of the HVAC and the learning environment. Obviously, Hilltop has AC in a much higher degree. CH Camel has like a couple of places that are, and in some of those hot days we had 2 weeks ago, like, they were literally packing kids in for 2 classes to one classroom because it was so hot in the other places. That, there's plenty of studies through Harvard and various organizations that showed the direct correlation in a decay of performance based upon the temperature of that you're in. So it definitely makes a difference in performance wise. It's not just about, we've seen people say these kids are soft and I didn't have AC, and we're better now. Like, modern technology, modern times, and educational like purposes that we do. Educational adequacy was a big piece of the OFCC assessment, which was then done by TDA again. And that's about space per student. That's about storage for extra spaces, being able to have charge capacity. And they didn't put as many outlets back in the day as they need nowadays. There's so many small pieces that add up that just show that we need more for what these kids are doing now, and those things simply weren't made for it, and you can't retrofit to make this stuff work. You can't do the HVAC can't go on the roof, right? There's no fire suppression in any of our schools. There is none. There's the
which is
fire
crazy.
extinguishers. Yeah, there's no cameras. You can't get self coverage inside these buildings. All these new ones will have all that stuff built into it, integrated to it. It'll have video camera systems for both live view that the police could get into for situational awareness if there ever was, God forbid, an issue. There's going to be automatic repeaters in there so that emergency radio would work no matter where they are in the building. Whereas now, similar to cellular, once you get inside deep into the middle school, like radios don't work from the outside. So there's a lot of pieces to it that are inherently going to make it better for our students, and safety is not the least of them. Fire, police coverage. We do have 3 police officers now, which is awesome. We still have 4 buildings. So right now, both elementary schools only have somebody there half the time. If we have 3 buildings, we will have a full-time officer at each building all day, every day. So that's a big piece of it that people are starting to understand and realize that, in today's day and age, it's not something you had to consider 20 years ago, really, right? It just wasn't a concern. And now we have officers in our force that are dedicated just to these schools. Parking, we need more. Gym, we need more. Everyone's made this big deal about this extra gym for the middle school. There's currently 3 gyms in our middle school, and the way these school designs work is it's kind of like a modular. Like when you go to build a custom home, right? You got a basic floor plan. Then you can add things on. You can choose different upgrades to it. That extra line item for the $3.6 million for a gym is entirely necessary. We need at least 2. Fortunately, because they're bigger now and they have more flex space built into them, just modern design again, it'll be able to get more use out of it than they can right now. But it's not something that's just like, oh, it's an extra. Like they need this. That it's so hard to get gym time in middle school because our sports are huge. Everyone's in it from beginning all the way through high school.
The facility committee that Lex and I were a part of, we looked at the cost of, here's what it would be to renovate these buildings versus build new. And it is cheaper or less expensive to build a brand new middle school with an extra gym than it was to renovate the existing structure that you just saw that was kind of pieced together over a century. So, we looked at cost effectiveness and adding that other gym. Basketball is huge. We're constantly fighting for space. Using that for volleyball, for all sports and extracurriculars, having that extra space is completely necessary. And it's not a Taj Mahal or anything extravagant. It's what the community needs and what children need to learn and to be able to have the activities that we want them to have, the extracurriculars, things like that.
Right. And Lex, you mentioned the stinking old, the classic saying of, well, I walked both ways uphill to school and I didn't have AC and it was 107 degrees when I was growing up. And, just because you dealt with it back in the day does not mean that the kids now with the current technology have to deal with the same thing. We can be better. It was wrong that you had to deal with that, and it's wrong now. So we can fix that. I know when
John works.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say.
Well, I was going to talk about the HVAC specifically that John talked about.
Go.
Because John is in the industry, so he understands about like air quality, and after the COVID thing that we had, we everyone's more aware of the fact that infections can spread throughout a school, whether it's just COVID or a regular cold. So the old stuff that we have there is just, you can't upgrade the middle school. It was not designed. You can't put any of the ducting anywhere. Can you speak to that a little bit more, John, about the passive filtration versus like the different options that we have?
Yeah, I think so. When at the onset of the pandemic, there were so working in the facility management industry, just to create a little credibility before I start spouting off things. Working in the facility management industry, particularly the mechanical side of things, so HVAC and any mechanical components that might be associated with that. So at the onset of the pandemic, you had multiple different scenarios going on. So one was facilities were closing entirely. Others were facilities were unable to close entirely and had to say, okay, we have to operate at full capacity as we always have, but make it a safer environment. And then you had facilities that said we need to do something in between. So not in all of those circumstances, the mechanical equipment and what was being done with them and the ratios of what you're doing with dampers and outside air outside air being circulated and the frequency at which that needs to happen was a consideration in any one of those specific plans. But we're currently in a position now, if you don't have the ability to circulate outside air, where that puts you in a space of vulnerability. So even doing the most basic upgrade to have more of a centralized system to circulate air will allow you to whatever of those scenarios, any of those three scenarios, to be able to make modifications and make adjustments. And similarly, there are additional elements of technology that exist. This isn't part of the plan, but things like UVC induct air sanitization, for example, though that's not part of the current plan, you need to have adequate systems to be able to do that. And you need to have, an environment to be able to even add on or consider adding on something like that. So, God forbid something like this were to happen again, and your control to be able to manage all of those different elements is limited if your systems and your infrastructure isn't, robust enough to be able to support it. I try to keep that super high level, but I can talk about anyone that wants to talk about duct work, I got you.
You can nerd out on
the John, I'll make sure to add to your title website marketing plus property management / HVAC guy.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Whatever you need.
For next time. But what was I gonna say? Did you have something, Pat, to say there? Did I skip you on accident once or no? Are you good?
I don't think so.
Okay. Lex, do you have something pulled up here? Do you want to go through this?
I want to talk to the economics of it, because this is stark to show you what it is, the difference between trying to renovate, which people have tried to propose as being a cheaper option. You're looking at over $80 million just to do the basic of renovations you need to make things like ADA compliant, because once you start renovating, you have to make it compliant. Right now, it can stay as is, kind of grandfathered in, but nothing's ADA compliant. The other day, a student passed out in one of the classrooms, and they couldn't get a wheelchair in to get the kid up onto the wheelchair. They had to carry them out of the room before they could get them onto a wheelchair. So that's just one example that was recent to it. But you can see that the Hilltop renovate is $20 million versus $23 million to renovate it. Now, when the OFCC recommends rebuilding it, and that's the Ohio Commission, Facilities Commission, they recommend if it's over 66% of the actual cost that you should rebuild. Well, we're at 86% in Hilltop, so 98%.
Lex, real quick. So that percentage, that it's a recommendation, but they'll kick in funding. That's what they use to decide whether you're eligible for their funding. Now there's waiver applications and stuff, but the real piece there is if it exceeds that 66%, then it's harder to get them to kick in any kind of funding to help you with the project. So
right, if just renovating, they don't give you that money. So that's 16% that we qualify for now versus the 60-some% in Youngstown. They got a lot more money because, again, it's based on house valuations per student. We wouldn't qualify if we decided just to renovate. So we wouldn't get any money back from the state if we just decided to do it that way. Either way, it's, as you can see, it wouldn't save us really that much money. And you'd still have 4 separate buildings, still old infrastructure with the inability to do certain things with modern HVAC, et cetera. It just makes sense to do it all at once. People are like, we should do it part now, part later, but we know that money gets worth less over time. We know goods and services cost more over time. And if you wait longer to do it and you go back to the voters in 7 to 15 years to say, okay, now we're going to rebuild the elementary schools because we could only do the middle school back then. You haven't solved any of the problems we already talked about that will be solved with one building. And you've now got a further deterioration along with the fact that it's going to cost way more to do it. than it would if we did it now. So that's kind of the economic reality of it, and it is a lot of money one way or another. It's just the way that funding works in Ohio, unfortunately. That's a whole discussion in of itself, which we can't change. So I just don't. I mean, I know you guys have talked about it exhaustively, right? So nothing we can do about that. We want to deal with how we can solve this problem now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add, I think some of the folks that we've talked to, when we were part of the facility committee, we had an open house, and we had a lot of folks come into the middle school gym, and something that we kept hearing was, how did the buildings get like this? Why weren't they maintained? And I feel like, there's a couple answers to that question. I feel like the maintenance team does a fantastic job they have $600,000 for the entire district. That's to replace heaters, replace windows, a ceiling collapses, fixing that. Or if you have to buy a bus, they do the best with the money that they have that was allocated, 20 some years ago for maintenance and upkeep. So, I think that's the answer to that. But just because we're at this point, I think what Lex was saying, just to continue it, is I don't want to be the generation that kicks this can down the road even further to where things get even worse. I went to Canfield in a building that was paid for by a generation that's kids had come and gone through Canfield because they saw there was community value to that. So I don't want to be continuing to kick that can down the road and say, well, Canfield's excellent now, we'll be excellent in 10 years. I'm not going to worry about it, because I think that's short-sighted. And I don't want to do that to the next group of kids coming through. I feel like that's not right as a community member.
Absolutely. I know in Poland, when we're talking with the superintendent, they're the old timers that used to go in the empty nesters that used to go to Poland, and they're trying to fight for a new school as well. The old timers basically were saying, like, another thing that they always say is, I went there, it has historical value. It means something to me. I'd hate to see these buildings knocked down because of the historical value. I see a little bit more of that in Poland than we do Canfield, I'm sure. But is there anything that's being done to implement, like, the old building materials, or like the old architecture, or the old structure in any way into the new, to kind of remember the past while still moving forward? Is that happening at all?
There will be those conversations after. So if the levy passes, then we've got a time period where they're getting input and feedback. The architect is selected who would do the design and things. And there's conversations with teachers about how do we set this up. And one of the things that some of these firms will do is bring in the community to get feedback, because that open house that I mentioned, there were people who went to high school in that building that were saying similar things, like there's historical significance to this, and the facade that says Canfield High School on the front of it, that means something to those folks. So I do think if we can get this thing passed, that needs to be part of the conversation, because I know schools like Austintown, I have friends who went there and live in Canfield now, and they kept pieces of the old building that meant something to the the graduating classes or that had come before them. So I think that's definitely part of that conversation if we get this thing passed, because I do think that it is nice to continue that legacy, and I'm a big fan of history. So I feel like keeping that alive and keeping that in the new structures is important. Yeah.
A quick comment here. Pat, Lex, and John, you guys are doing absolutely awesome. Well, damn, Jim, what did I do to you? The time is now, and the costs just keep increasing. See if there's any other ones in here. So much of what you were saying mimics this. Here's Diane's from Poland, actually, and she says, so much of what you were saying mimics the same things being discussed in Poland regarding the levy. It's happening everywhere. It really is.
It is. There's a lot of the last go around is when I really started deep diving into these things with various board members, having sit downs, one-on-ones, having group meetings with them, going to the school board meetings, etc. And what I found when I started researching it across the country is that this is everywhere. Like you said, the aged infrastructure of our public school system reflects a lot of ways, like the bridges and the infrastructure that we're putting a lot of money into right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard for funding. Like the rules about the way you can fund schools in each state is different, but all of them make it very difficult to do. Like there can be no private money from boosters to help pay for something for a school to be built. It can do stuff for sports facilities, but there's a clear delineation of what you can use money for and what you can't. The levy rules and how you have to do the percentages, the amount of money that you're allowed to borrow at any given time. It's like you said, it's everywhere. It's not just our local area. It's a nationwide problem. And the only people that can solve it are those in the community. And public education is paid for by the public. Whether you have a kid now, never had a kid, you're going to have a kid in the future. It's a pillar of society. And, honestly, one of the ways that they measure the success of a developed nation against others is how good their public education system is. We rate pretty high, like the highest when it comes to secondary and like college, but we're middle of the pack when you look at the top 30 schools, top 30 public education. We're like 16 or 17, I think was the last one I saw. So, we have to do it at our own level because no one's going to save us but ourselves.
And if it's happening everywhere, if you can prove yourself as a school district that transitions into this new school efficiently and effectively while still maintaining high scores within the school, it will pay. It will pay dividends in the future. So definitely. But you guys good? Before we get out of here, let's talk one more time, Pat, that event next Friday, fifth quarter at Kensington.
Yes.
Times.
So
the game.
Yeah, so it's running from 9 to 12 after the high school football game. All the proceeds go to the levy campaign. We're looking to just bring as many community members out as possible. Try to educate folks, make everybody aware of what's on the ballot, and just try to engage anybody that we can on supporting us and getting out there and advocating for this levy as well.
Perfect. Lex has pulled something here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add the bourbon raffle as well. Tickets are still available. We'll be drawing that at the fifth quarter event. And then you can purchase tickets for the fifth quarter event also on the website.
And if you care about bourbon, the Angel's Envy is actually one that you can only get at the distillery if you take a tour. So it's a reserve, but it's also one that's a special reserve because you can't buy it at any store. So that's kind of neat.
John, are you making this website? You're doing a good job, dude. You got everything in here.
Yeah, I did. And I dropped a link in the private chat here. Isaac, I don't know if we can drop that in the
is it in? Did you drop? Oh, private chat. Oh, see it. Okay. Let me share this.
So anyone that might want to head over, but it is supportcanfieldschools.org. If you go under volunteer, there's a little sub tab for events, and there's a online ticket purchasing option here.
Just dropped it in the chat for everybody to see.
Awesome. Yeah, and again, this website's a great resource. It's something that's it's a living, breathing thing. So we're constantly updating as additional information comes through. And when we get more insight as to tax and valuation, any updates, any information we have, that'll all be present here. Frequently asked questions, tax calculator, as we mentioned, the ability to donate, to support, to volunteer. This is truly a community-based effort, and any support we can leverage, any support we can get is great. And we hope we see everybody next Friday. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. And for those watching, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you. If you have any questions about the Committee to Support Canfield Schools, the levy, anything like that, reach out to these guys. Are you guys in Everything Canfield? The Facebook group? Okay. So you guys are all in there. This was shared in Everything Canfield, so majority of the people watching are from there. Pat Schuley, Lex Calder, John Schuler, all in there. You can message them if you have questions. Any other information you guys want to share so people can reach out or anything like that before we go?
I think we're good. Yeah, I appreciate you. Appreciate you letting us talk.
Thank you.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate you. All right, we'll see you.
MLO bros.
We'll see you around. Let me know how I can help, guys, if anything. So
Shall
talk to
do.
you soon. All right.
Thanks.
See ya. All righty. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I appreciate you. Isaac from the MLO Bros. If you haven't already, down below, I know there are 38 people still watching. Give us a like or a heart down below. Helps us out tremendously. Helps get more people watching this video. I think we have 3 likes right now, but we need more. I'd appreciate that. Also, MLO Bros go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8:30 p.m. If you like this content and you want to see similar stuff to it, go check out our Facebook page. We have all kinds of stuff over there. And like I said, we go live 8:30 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Like and follow the MLO Bros if you haven't already. Our Facebook page, as well as our YouTube page. We would appreciate you for doing so. Thank you so much for watching. And I will see you guys around. I'm sure Isaac Schuster in Everything Canfield. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. I'm one of the admins. So, all right, guys, have a great Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time.